Remember this, some of the best deals are the ones you walk away from. Learn the art of no if it doesn't make 100%. Hi, this is Coach Joe Lucas, and welcome to the Magellan Network Show. My goal inside of this communication, this show, is to share with you my nearly 30 years of coaching some of the most successful financial advisors in North America. We're going to be talking about strategies, syntaxes. We're going to be bringing guests on from time to time, and I'm going to share with you what's working now. So think of this show as sort of like a little one-on-one kind of mini coaching cast, if you like, where we're going to be going in depth from time to time on strategies to help you grow your business, get more effective, become more efficient, find balance in your time management, grow your business, and quite frankly, whatever else is going on in the world today. So before we get to today's episode, I'd love for you to do a couple things for me. Number one, make sure that if you're watching this on YouTube, that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you're doing the audio, make sure that you give us a review on whether it's Spotify or Apple. We'd really appreciate that. And quite frankly, that does help. It does matter when you rate things and like things and subscribe to things. It helps us get the word out to more of the industry. And lastly, I have a very special gift for you. Go to MagellanNetwork.net, so one word, MagellanNetwork.net, and I have for you a complimentary membership, 100% gratis, where you can tap into about between 50 and 75 hours of masterclasses, forms, tools, templates, and strategies. So please go ahead and make sure you go ahead and get that claimed. Smash the like button and subscribe. And please go ahead and leave us a review on whatever podcasting platform you're on. And now, let's get to this week's episode. Hi, it's your coach, Joe Lucas, and welcome to this episode of the Magellan Network Show. In this episode and in the next episode, so think of it like a 2-episode series, I want to go over partnerships. So this episode, we're going to go over sort of like worst practices, what not to do. And then next week, I'm going to give you a syntax on some partnership best practices. I realize that in a lot of these, for the last couple of years, we've never really talked about partnership on this show, and I apologize for that. It's something I do a lot of work around, a lot of coaching around, and partnerships in my mind come into 2 different flavors. What I call non-DNA shared partnerships, which are just like, 2 or 3 colleagues get together, common values, stuff like that. And then there are the family partnerships, which have a whole nother layer of complexities, which we're going to unpack a little bit of that today. So in this episode, what I want to do is kind of give you my top 10 worst practices, things you want to avoid at all costs that will definitely sabotage your partnerships, okay? And then let me also, because this industry has a way of kind of intermingling terminology here, there, in my experience, is a massive difference between a partnership and a team. A team is a solo leader, a solo decision maker. Now you could have equity partners, like my COO's got 2.5%, so my top people have a couple points of business. That's fine. That's an equity partnership, but not a true partnership of power sharing, okay? So they could be owners. It doesn't mean they're partners, okay? And then teams, right? So you're going to have a team with equity. A partnership is when you have more than one decision maker, more than one visionary, more than one significant stakeholder, okay? So in that way. So how I define, so if you ask me, what are the 3 tenets of a partnership? It's going to be, in no particular order, money. So how is comp handled? Power, how and who makes decisions and on what? And then on equity, who owns what, right? And a lot of times people think equity and comp are synonymous, and they don't have to be. You can have somebody that owns a very small percentage, but they're highly comp because they have a very, very important share. So don't always assume that, right, going forward. But with all that said, let's unpack the top 10 do not do's, if you will. All right. So first thing is, number one, is rushing into a partnership. Look, these things always work out on paper. They always look good. It's exciting, right? 1 + 1 = 4. And it's the honeymoon phase, and everybody glosses over things. So to me, it's really about what I call a multi-week, if not multi-month discovery phase. Now, I'll unpack the discovery phase a little bit more in detail next week, but to give you an idea, what's the vision? Work style. This is a key one, right? So you can have the same vision. Hey, this is what we want to we want to create this multi-billion-dollar whatever it is, right? But then if we have like 2 partners or 3 partners or 4 partners, and you have one partner who's a bit of a workaholic, and you have one partner who's very involved with their children's lives, soccer, lacrosse, baseball, football, whatever, that has to be totally discussed and disclosed early on, right? And rules, because what happens a lot of times, they build resentment. So you want to have then also understand everybody's personality and behavioral style is going to be different. So one of the things we'll talk about next week is the absolute must of executing a thorough behavioral assessment on all the stakeholders and to look for, in advance, potential conflicts. So that's the first thing. So we do a discovery phase. Now, how long does that discovery phase last? It depends. No less than 90 days. 6 months would be better in my mind. And again, we'll unpack that a little bit more next week. Next, a major mistake partnerships make is they avoid conflict. So here's the thing. Partnerships in this game are like marriages, hopefully without the sex, right? So communication is everything. So shared vision, shared values, and communication are everything. 100%. Once partners stop talking, once partners go into the bunker, you are now in the downward spiral. And every day you stay there, the record grooves get deeper. It's harder to pull out of that dive. All right? So you don't let things fester. And that's why we're going to talk next week about partner meetings and the cadence of those and how to build an agenda. Because if you don't do this, communication will lag. And I'm not talking about, tactical stuff. I'm talking about the real relational aspects of it, right? And then the next thing you know, you have a partnership, you have an economic relationship, an equity relationship, but you're like estranged in your own building, in your own office. Okay? Third element, failure to clearly define roles. So partners are kind of fall into kind of 2 buckets in my experiences. Complementary style. So, hey, I'm a really good rainmaker. You're really good operationally, right? So, hey, we're going to divide and conquer, and that's clearly defined. Everybody's on board. Everybody understands like a team. Everybody understands their position. The second thing is we have 2 or 3 people that are similar. So they're collaborative, not complementary. Okay. So in collaborative, there has to be an agreement on filling out the org chart with the necessary players to be successful. And that can also lead to number 2, which is conflict and shutdown and all that. So that's why all this, by the way, ideally, my world, all these things are defined before pen strikes paper in any partnership agreement. Number 4, the money. Understanding financial splits, who gets paid what, and what gets expensed to the firm. All right, this is a big one. I've seen partnerships go really spiral out because of auto expenses, travel expenses, what people want to kind of bake into the pie. And look, I'm not an IRS agent. I'm not here to give you tax advice, but I've seen some interesting things in my day. And, all that has to be discussed. Like, simple thing. Well, hey, the business is going to pay for our cars. Great. And then nobody talks about what the auto allowance is. And the next thing you know, your partner's pulling up in a $250,000 Mercedes-Benz on a lease that costs $4,000 a month. And you're rolling around in a Ford F-150 pickup. Nice truck, by the way. That's $1,000 a month. And your brain goes, hey, this is not what's going on here. This isn't fair, right? So all those things, expenses, covered, things you're going to gray area, whatever it is, you want to get absolute clarity on. And my recommendation is don't agree to pay for something, agree to an allowance for it. Travel allowance, auto allowance, things like that. And if they want to go above it, your partner wants a charter private jet to go to Schwab Impact, and our travel budget is $20,000 a year per partner. Hey, you cover the difference, brother. Just the way it is, right? So think about that in advance. Number 5, lack of communication. So I'm going to go over the next episode and I think it's monthly, by the way, so I'll give you that, what a monthly partner meeting looks like. how agendas are built, where to do it, where not to do it, and why it's critical to do it. All right. Number 6, ego decision making. So look, everybody's gonna be different. In my experience is that it's kind of funny. It's kind of one or two boxes, either partnerships or I've got an alpha, and then everybody kind of is in kind of understanding who the alpha is, right? The all-star, if you will. And then I've got 3 or 4 people that think they're alphas, right? And then we get into a whole different scenario. So one of the things, and that's why we talk about decision making. So remember I said equity, money, power, right? Power. How do we make decisions? If it's 2 people, one wants to do something, one doesn't, how do you break that tie, right? If you're equal partners, you better have a third party in your partnership agreement. You better have here's how we break ties, right? Or if I've got 4 partners, is it 3 or does it has to be unanimous? Does it has to be unanimous on certain things and majority on other things, right? If I have 3, like there's all these things you need to think about. Hi, Coach Joe Lukacs here, and I'm just breaking here for a moment just to do a couple quick reminders. Number 1, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel or our podcast. In addition, please leave a comment or a review. Those things really, really matter. And share this episode with 3 of your colleagues inside the financial services space. And lastly, make sure that you go ahead and claim your free membership inside of Magellan Network. Now back to this week's episode. Like for example, one of my partnerships, if you want to do a business expense under $5,000, we don't need to ask your partner to do it. Just go do it, as long as it makes sense, right? Anything over $5,000 has got to be put on the partnership agreement, has to be put on the board in the agenda for the partner meeting. Okay, all new hires are definitely on the agenda, right? Things like that. So you want to just really understand that. Okay, super, super, super critical. Number 7, legal protection. This is massive, right? So it's kind of funny, the collarless kid who has no shoes. You'll advise a business owner on estate planning, all that stuff, and yet you have no plan for yourself. And I've had situations where a team comes to me after a partner passes away, and now the partner's spouse/estate is now a partner, right? So you want to understand arbitration, disputes. I know this is like the nasty stuff, and I get it, but think of it like a prenup, okay, or a part of a prenup. You want to understand what happens, right? You want to have legal protections from an entity perspective, where you go and talk to your CPA, talk to your business attorneys. You want to structure these things right from the get-go. So if you're thinking about putting a partnership together, now if you're in a firm, you're going to have limitations what you can do there, obviously. But if you're independent, highly recommend a very competent business attorney who has operated in the space. So there's all different ways to formulate entities, what type of entities, umbrella entities and sub-entities. There's a lot of different ways to structure things from a liability perspective, also from a tax efficiency perspective. Again, not my area of expertise, but you want to understand that and don't just kind of do it, okay? So take the time. I'll tell you what, I would rather you guys have a somewhat uncomfortable conversation building this out than be in litigation for a year as your business burns to the ground because everybody's focused on screwing the other person, all right? So make sure you do this. Number 8, cultural fit, which we don't talk a lot about. How do we operate? What's important to us, our core values, right? Like I've got several clients that have really created a very, very faith-based organization. That's one of their core values. It's one of their non-negotiables, right, in essence. And we need to talk about that, right? I've got a client who's building a firm for lesbian and gay communities, right? With lesbian and gay advisors. Nothing wrong with that. LBJQ, right? Nothing wrong with that. But that's their culture. Okay? And you don't have to do those things. But what I am saying to you is culture matters. So if you're saying, hey, we're family first, then one of the partners can't be a workaholic, right? It doesn't work. It's not a cultural fit. So you just want to understand that, right? Those are, again, conversations you want to have early on. Number 9, failure to adopt change. So look, this is our game today, 2025, September, is very different than it was a decade ago. It will definitely be, and I think the pace of change is increasing, not decreasing. So I think every 5 years is it worthwhile to pull out your partnership agreements, your operating agreement, and just see what's relevant, what's new, right? Things like that. I think that's really important. Evolve or die, right? That's kind of the thing that we always hear a lot about. I think it's very true in the partnership game. And is it also very possible that a partner, you guys can advise create partnerships and everything's good for 5 or 10 years, then something happens and a partner's values change and what's important to them change? Yeah, it can. I mean, I've had a situation where, I've worked with a partnership and one of the two founders, there's 4 equity partners. One of the founders, spouse passed away from breast cancer very early in life. And it forced him to really reevaluate everything. He had a couple of teenage kids to now be sole parent to, and he and I talked about this, and we decided it would be in everybody's best interest to retain equity, but to reduce our comp and to reduce our if you will, roll on the team temporarily, like almost like not a full sabbatical, but like a step back temporarily, right? Because family first, right? And because the partnership was built around, family first, we're going to do it the right way. His partners totally understand. They rallied around him and they got him through a very, very dark time for him personally, right? That's what culture can do for you if you build it, right? And that's what change will also allow. So again, just because the way you think, and we all know this of any plan. And by the way, I've never seen a situation where a partnership does not look good on paper, right? You can always make the numbers work. The problem is when you hit first contact, the plan kind of gets shredded. So how fast can you adapt to change? How fast can you not dig your heels in and really look at what's truly in front of you down this road, not what you thought was going to be in front of you? Okay, critically important. And then the last piece is what I call, the prenup, which is, if a partner wants to leave, how do they leave? What are the valuation metrics? How's the money paid out over what period of time? Are we going to be the bank? Are they going to have to go? Are we going to have to go to a lending facility and do a cash deal? I mean, all those things have to be. You want to have your prenup. Is to me, so if I think about, partnership agreement, operating agreement, prenup, right? 3 things. The prenup is one of the 3. I mean, you can't do you need that third one. You need to know how you're going to unwind this thing if you need to unwind it. And I will tell you, and again, I'm not really seeing any data on this, but I have a sense of it. I believe partnerships in this business after 5 years is about 50-50. That the way they were now, so if you have 3 people, does that mean the business is gone? No, maybe one partner leaves, stuff like that. But I would say over 5 years, if these things are not followed, probably 50% of them kind of fall apart after 5 years because they were never put together properly. They just weren't. And I had a situation very recently where one of my long-term clients was going to enter into a partnership. And this has been about a year in the making, so it wasn't like a surprise. I'm going to tell the story, and then, like I said, we'll get you guys out of here. There was an alignment in terms of values. There was an alignment in terms of how things need to get done, the standards, fiduciary, the ethics, morals, all that. Total alignment. Wasn't in alignment was vision. Vision. And I remember talking to my guy and on the Zoom a couple very recently, and I could just see he was very uneasy. So like I said, and I've worked with him for 15 years, so I know him very, very well. And I said, this whole partnership thing was brought to you and sort of like, I don't know, marketed to you, right? Like in other words, it was kind of put in front of you and you kind of adopted it. But it was never your vision. And the more he got into it, the more he started to realize that his vision, what he wanted to do with his life over the next 10, 20 years, was radically different than his soon-to-be partner's vision, what he wanted to create over the next 5 to 10 years. And you just can't do that. It won't, I mean, you could shoehorn it temporarily, but it's inevitably going to explode. It just will. So after a lot of soul searching, my client went to his soon-to-be partner and said, you know, we can collaborate. We can do some strategic stuff together, but we shouldn't be partners together because you want to build this organizational piece, and I just want to have a really well-oiled, ensemble team. I don't want all that. And then he ended it with, and if you were to pass away, I'd be in partnership with your estate and spouse, and that's just not something I'm willing to do. All right. Tough conversation he had, the right conversation he had, and it was in everybody's best interest. It was in his soon-to-be partner's best interest versus a year or two down the road when things get messy. It was definitely in his best interest. It was in his family's best interest. It was in his team's best interest. It was in his client's best interest. Remember this. Some of the best deals are the ones you walk away from. Learn the art of no if it doesn't make 100%. Okay? So that's what I got for you guys this week. Next week, we are going to talk about best practices. I'll give you 10 of those. In the meanwhile, if you're wondering where I got this content from, I asked my AI, hey, I want to do a podcast on partnerships. Give me the top 10 things to do and top 10 things to avoid. And my AI, which contains 31 years of me, basically, gave me all those answers in about 2 minutes. If you want access to my AI for a trial, free, all you need to do is go to MagellanNetwork.net and request a 30-day trial. I will tell you, my AI is the Chat GTP for financial advisors. That's what people have told me. It's not available in the marketplace. It's only available in our community. So if you want to play with it for free, just put a request in at MagellanNetwork.net for a trial, and we'll be happy to do that for you, and you can experience it yourself. With that said, if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you're subscribed to either my YouTube channel or my podcast here. Share this episode with a friend, especially if you know somebody who's thinking about partnerships or is in a partnership. And with that said, have a great week, and I'll see you all again in 7 days. Thank you for watching or listening to this episode of the Magellan Network Show. Hey, if any of this resonated with you, I invite you to come to MagellanNetwork.net, and we have a powerful group coaching community of like-minded advisors. Come in for a trial. You and I will have a one-on-one conversation. Let's see if I can help elevate your game, both personally and professionally.